Have you ever had something you love taken away from you by people who think they have power over you? Well, that's exactly what happened to one man. But instead of giving in, he fought back in the most unbelievable way possible. This is the story of a fisherman, an HOA, and a lake that changed everything. For years, our main character, let's call him David, lived a peaceful life in a quiet suburban neighborhood. He wasn't a troublemaker. He paid his HOA fees on time. He kept his lawn trimmed, his house neat, his driveway clean. But David had one passion, one escape from the noise of daily life: fishing. At the edge of the neighborhood was a small, beautiful lake. It wasn't massive, maybe 20 acres across, but it was enough. The water shimmered in the early morning sun. Ducks floated lazily across its surface, and you could often see fish jumping out to catch bugs. For David, this lake wasn't just water, it was peace, it was therapy, it was happiness. Every weekend, David would grab his fishing pole, walk down to the lake, and sit for hours. Sometimes he caught something, sometimes he didn't. It didn't matter. Fishing wasn't about the result, it was about the calm. His neighbors knew him as the fisherman. Kids would wave when they saw him heading to the lake. Some even asked him to show them how to tie a hook or cast a line. For years, it was never a problem, until one day, it became a problem. It started with a letter, a plain white envelope tucked into David's mailbox. No warning, no conversation, no knock on the door, just an envelope with the HOA logo stamped at the top. Inside, a single sheet of paper. Dear homeowner, it has come to our attention that you have been engaging in prohibited activity by fishing in the lake located within our community. According to HOA guidelines, such actions are not permitted. Effective immediately. You are fined $100. Continued violations will result in further penalties. David read the letter 3 times, trying to process what he had just seen. Fishing. Prohibited. When had that even been a rule? He flipped through his HOA handbook, searching for the exact line, and guess what? He found nothing. No mention of fishing, no ban on the lake, nothing at all. This wasn't just confusing, it felt like a slap in the face. For years he had been fishing peacefully, bothering no one, and suddenly it was an offense worthy of punishment. David crumbled the letter in his fist, his heart pounding. He knew right then and there that this wasn't going to end with his quietly writing a check. This was only the beginning. David didn't pay the fine. Instead, he wrote a polite but firm email to the HOA board. Dear board members, I received your letter regarding fishing in the lake. I have reviewed the community handbook and I see no such rule listed. Could you please clarify where the restriction is documented? He thought that would be the end of it, a simple misunderstanding that could be cleared up with a little communication. But when the HOA replied, it was anything but simple. The response came back cold and legalistic. The HOA board has decided that fishing creates potential liability issues. It is therefore prohibited as a matter of board policy. Failure to comply will result in escalating fines. Liability issues? David couldn't believe it. He wasn't swimming. He wasn't building a dock. He wasn't starting a fishing tournament with 100 people. He was one man, sitting quietly with a rod and a line. Still, he tried to play fair. He asked if he could come to the next HOA meeting and discuss the matter in person. The board agreed reluctantly. The meeting took place in the clubhouse at the edge of the neighborhood. About 30 residents sat in folding chairs, whispering among themselves. At the front, 5 HOA board members sat behind a long table, papers stacked in front of them like judges in a courtroom. David stood up when his name was called. He explained calmly, I have lived here for years. I have never had an issue. Fishing in the lake has always been a small joy of mine. I don't see why it's suddenly forbidden, and I would like to ask that the board reconsider. Some neighbors nodded in agreement. A few even clapped quietly. But the board members exchanged stiff glances. Finally, the HOA president leaned forward. He was a short, gray-haired man with glasses and a permanent frown. His name was Mr. Collins, and he spoke with a kind of authority That comes from loving power a little too much. Mr. David, Collins said, the HOA is responsible for maintaining safety and order in the community. Fishing may seem harmless to you, but it introduces risk, hooks, lines, accidents. We cannot apply it. The matter is closed. David's blood boiled. With all due respect, that lake is part of what makes this neighborhood special. You can't just make up rules whenever you feel like it. Collins narrowed his eyes. We can and we have. If you wish to avoid further fines, you will comply. The room buzzed with tension. Some neighbors looked uncomfortable. Others whispered to each other. It was clear the board wasn't interested in compromise. The very next day, David found another envelope in his mailbox. Another fine, this time $200, and attached with a note. We have received reports that you continue to fish in violation of HOA policy. Consider this your final warning. David hasn't even been to the lake since the meeting. It was obvious now. They weren't just enforcing rules, they were targeting him. And that's when David made a promise to himself. If the HOA wanted a fight, they were going to get it. This wouldn't end with him paying a few $100s. No, he was going to make sure they regretted every single letter, every single fine, every single smug word spoken in that meeting. They had declared war, and David wasn't planning on losing. From that day forward, the relationship between David and the HOA turned toxic. Every time he walked outside, he felt eyes on him. Neighbors who once smiled now looked away. Others whispered behind his back, and a few that were closest to the HOA board didn't bother hiding their smirks. It wasn't just about fishing anymore, it was about control. Within a week, David received another fine, this one for $300. The notice claimed that a neighbor had witnessed him fishing, but David hadn't gone near the lake since the meeting. He realized with sinking anger that they didn't even need proof anymore. They could simply accuse him, and that was enough. David called the HOA office and demanded the explanation. The secretary, sounding nervous, told him, "The board has board authority, sir. If they believe you have violated policy, they can act accordingly." Even it's not true, David pressed. Silence, then a click. She hung up on him. By the end of the month, David had 4 separate fines, totaling nearly $1,000. He refused to pay a single one. Letters piled up, each one more threatening than the last. They warned of legal actions, liens on his property, even the possibility of foreclosure if he didn't comply. Imagine that, losing your home, all because you cast a fishing line in a lake. Distress began to take a toll. David's wife worried constantly. Friends told him to just pay the fines and move on. "It's not worth it, David," they said. "It's just a few $100, let it go." But David couldn't. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about principle. Every time he saw the lakes shimmering in the sun, he felt the injustice of it all. That water had brought him peace for years, and now it was being used as a weapon against him. One evening, as David walked past the lake without his fishing pole, he saw something that made his blood boil. 2 children, members of the HOA president's family, were throwing bread into the water, attracting ducks and geese. No fines for them, no letters, no threats. Apparently, the rules only applied to him. At the next HOA meeting, David stood up again. "You have fined me hundreds of dollars for something that isn't even in the handbook. Meanwhile, others use the lake freely without consequences. How do you justify that?" Collins, the HOA president, gave him a smug smile. "Mr. David, the board decides what is or isn't acceptable use of community property. If you don't like it, perhaps this isn't the right neighborhood for you." The room gasped. Neighbors looked at each other, uncomfortable with how brazenly Collins dismissed him. David clenched his fists. He wanted to shout, to call out the unfairness, but he stopped himself, because in that moment he realized something. He would never win if he played by the rules. If he wanted justice, if he wanted freedom, he would need to find another way, a way the HOA could never touch. And slowly an idea began to form.